One more session is scheduled with Butter Pass, the next one, session 4, and hopefully that will be our last session of the series. So if you have any questions or any feedback, just write in the group or message me on WhatsApp or LinkedIn, where we are connected. So we can work on it and we can plan something else, like more trainings, more workshops. We are already planning one on Revenue Cloud. So once the details are confirmed, I'll be making an announcement.
While we are waiting for more people
Uh-huh.
to join,
Yeah, Bhadrabhi?
sorry, Rimsha, carry on.
Yeah,
I just want to see like how many people are there and like what roles are there in right now. And
yeah.
I think that could be much more like I want to have a very collaborative session with the team. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but you can carry on whatever you were saying.
Share in the chat about your current role, company, and where you are joining, so we can have a good idea about your experience and your current role, right? And I'm also
Exactly,
saying that if you
exactly.
guys are
Like
based in
I want to
Karachi,
see who.
I think there is a lag, so no worries. But you go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I was just saying like I want to see how many people are there in the functional role or working as a business analyst, or trying to move towards the business analyst role. Um, yeah. So I think Nurulan. So SQ engineer, okay, and business analyst, nice, nice. Salesforce developer, technical lead, amazing. Walid. Okay, so Ahmad as a business system technical consultant, okay. Salesforce admin on the way to sit for a B exam, amazing. Rimsha, I think we can start now.
Sure, Bhadrabhi. Okay, sir.
Okay, so let me present my screen. And if you guys have any question, just write your question in the chat. And at the end, I will go through, or Rimsha and I will go through with all the questions, and I will try to answer all of them. Okay, just give me a few seconds. Let me present my screen. Please confirm if you're seeing the presentation slide in a full
Uh,
view mode.
yes, Bhadrabhi. We can see it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Rimsha. So today's topic is about a very important part of a project, or you can say a very initial phase of a project that basically defines the further steps, or you can say the success of the project. So we will discuss about the requirement documentation in general, the requirement phase, what are the parts, what type of requirements we have, what type of documentation that needs to be created in the requirement gathering phase, and then further on, like as we done with the requirement documentation, we will discuss about the process mapping, and we will surely understand like why it is so important during the project design phase or the requirement gathering phase, why process mapping helps in creating a best design, or you can say the design which customer is expecting. So let's deep dive into it. So a little bit introduction about myself. My name is Badr Abbas. I'm working as a VP service delivery at Cloud Junction Advisors. I have almost 15 years of experience uh, in Salesforce world, and I started my career as a business analyst. Then further, I moved on as a project manager slash business analyst, and then from there, the manager of service delivery towards more roles to the service delivery lead as Cloud Junction in Cloud Junction. So that's a some basic introduction about myself, and let's move forward. So the first, you can say, the broad topic that we will discuss today is about the requirement documentation. And I think most of the people who are experienced in the tech world knows about like why the requirement gathering phase is so much important, why company invest so much on in this phase, so that they want to have a very smooth project delivery. And when the requirement phase is smooth, like you get everything that you need from the customer in a right manner, and the requirements are crystal clear, then definitely it defines the project path towards the success. But let's say if you don't have clear requirements or all the requirements, then definitely the project will suffer, either in any phase of the project. It can happen in the design phase, it can happen in the build phase or UAT phase, or maybe after at the go live of the project. So let's first understand like why we do the requirement gathering, why it is so much important once the project started, like the sales has been done and the project is now handed over to the team, and now the team will basically involve in it, and now they are basically understanding the customer, understanding their business, and why they have to go through the business requirement phase, gathering phase. So let's say the downside of it, like what if you don't do it? Definitely there are a lot of issues if you don't do it. And if when I talk to my juniors, hey, this is our project methodology that we follow, and when I explain to them in a very very simple manner, let's say some your father has given you a direction, that hey, you need to reach at that place. You need to understand, you need to ask some further questions. Hey, why I have to reach there, at what time I have to reach there, what's the how do I reach there? Do I have to use a public transport? Do I have to use car over there? Is it so urgent? Why is it so important right now to do it? So you can understand, like behind a single thing there can be so much questions that can clarify why certain things needs to be done in a right way. So if we now implement and like apply the same logic on the project that we get from the customer, is let's say if you don't have a poor or proper requirements, then definitely uh, the features that you will build nobody will use, because this is not what their expectations were. You can say if almost 40 to 50% of the project budget will spend on the rework. Let's say you got a project, let's say $50,000, you have consumed everything, and now the once the client has seen it, and they are saying, hey, this is not what we want because the requirements are not clear. It can happen on the both sides. Like customer doesn't know what they are asking, what they need in the system, and the team doesn't know what they are building, what they should ask from the customer. So scope creep can happen, like the customer is expecting something else, and now they have a very broad vision, but it can be like the team doesn't understand like what customer is asking for. Uh, uh, Team politics happens, like team blames each other. The dynamics, the chemistry becomes negative between the team, and in the end, if you still go with the go live phase, then there will be no project adoption from the customer side, and eventually that means the project got failed. So now, if we see on the other hand, like why do we why the requirement gathering phase is so much important? What does it impact on the project? It gives you clarity. It gives you exactly what the business needs. You can deliver the project in the first time. You don't have to go into the iterative phase. Here we show something and then get the feedback, and you do something and then get the feedback. It spends efforts, like it will impact the budget, it will impact the timeline, it will impact the you can say the efforts put by the team, and yeah, definitely the budget as well. You can define the scope boundaries. Hey, we are building this, this is our boundary, this is what we build, this is what we will not build. So you can define a very clear boundary on the features or on the based on the requirements that you will get. So share understanding from day one, like the client understands what you're building because you have something written somewhere that you can point it out. Hey, this is what we have discussed, and this is what we are building, and they will agree on it. And in the end, like if everything goes successful, the requirements are perfect, you have built based on those requirements, which is approved, then in the end, definitely the customer will use and they will have a very high satisfaction, or you can say adoption of the system. And if you just look at some facts, so a missing requirement discovers at the coding. Let's say you are in a build phase now, and now you find out, hey, there's a very critical part of a solution that we haven't discussed or we didn't know about it. Then definitely you can understand, hey, now you have to go back to customer. You have now have meetings. Then you need to see the design. You need to see the impact of that requirement on the other features that you have built so far. So you can see there's much more impact out of it if you miss a requirement at the initial phase. And 71% of the project fails due to poor requirement gathering. I've seen multiple times while in my experience and while talking to the customer, hey, why their project got failed, why their Salesforce adoption got failed, and it is because of like the developers or the consultants didn't understand what they are trying to build over here. And in the end, it also about the stakeholders didn't know what they want. Hey, they have a very broad idea. Hey, we want to increase our revenue, but they don't know how. Where is the gap? What processes they need to improve? If they don't have that clear understanding, then definitely the consultant team or the organization that is implementing the project, it will be very hard for them to understand what exactly we have to build. So it's a two-way process. It's a two-sided, you can say, information that needs to be built. Like the client has to understand first, like, hey, what we are trying to do over here, and then the consultant has to basically get that, then ask more questions underneath that and understand exactly what customer is trying to do over here. Okay, so I think we have identified why the requirement gathering phase matters. And now let's move forward to a very basic uh, item is like the types of requirements. So number one, it's functional. There can be a functional requirement. There can be a non-functional requirement, a business requirement, and a user related requirement. Mostly, in my experience, we have mostly dealt with the functional and the non-functional requirements because the business requirements are the usually high-level goals, high-level you can say the expectations that is coming out of like what they're expecting from the business. Hey, they want to increase the retention of their customers by 15%. That's the business goal that they want to achieve. But as a consultant team, what we are more interested in it in the functional and the non-functional requirements. So the functional requirements are what the system must do, right? So like you have to have a very clear understanding, hey, how the system should work. And those functional requirements can be either you customers can give you, hey, this is what we are expecting from the system, or as an experienced consultant, they know, hey, based on the requirements or the scope of work that is defined, these are the some certain requirements, functional requirements that system must have. So for example, if you're building a portal for a customer, it must have a login page, and then definitely there should be some functional requirements for that login page. A very basic generic example. For non-functional, how the system performs, it basically usually defines the quality. Like, for example, the email should go to the relevant user who has requested the password. It should not go to the other user. So that's a kind of like a security that you're putting over here that defines the quality of the basic requirement for the password email. So let's say, and the business, as we talked earlier, it's a high level organizational goal that you capture, and you can just add it to your document, the business requirement document in it. The stakeholder requirements are, you can say, the user specific requirement. It can be based on a different roles. It can be based on the different departments that you want to like clearly write it down. And as an example that I've written over here, as a manager, I want to see the team dashboard. So that's a very specific user requirement. Like say, the dashboard should not be for sales rep, but it's for manager. Just to elaborate over here. Let's move forward some real world examples. So let's say if we have a requirement, and let's say how in the different types of requirements, how this each requirement fits. So if I see in a functional requirement, as a functional requirement, the system sends an email with a reset link. That's a very simple requirement. What system should do? The system should send an email with a reset link so that user can click and reset the password. And if I change that requirement into a non-functional requirement, so that can be email delivered within 5 seconds. So that defines the functionality, the quality of that functionality. Hey, the email should go in within 5 seconds. But if it is 10 seconds, then definitely that's a delay. That's not what user is expecting, or not. That's not what system should behave like. And if we now convert this into a business requirement, reduce powered password related support calls by 40%. Now you can understand, hey, what if the password email goes after 20 seconds? Then definitely the user will start calling, hey, we haven't received, or they will send an email. We haven't received the email to reset the password, and now our process is stuck, and they can be much more issues to it. And if I see as a user requirement, as a forgetful user, which means like forgot my password, I want a self-service reset. That's how, if we see a one single requirement and let's say in a different types of requirement, this is how we see re- uh, uh, how it can be interpreted. So CERM, like while you were in the business requirement document, or sorry, requirement gathering phase, there are certain documents that you need to follow or that you need to create. The reason why I think it's the very basic purpose of writing down the requirements in the document is to have it like solidify, it's written somewhere, someone can review it, customers can review it, and everyone can approve it, and then further the project can move on. So that's why, like in general terms, why some juniors ask me, hey, Bhadrabhai, why do we have to create a very detailed document of the requirement gathering phase? Why don't we just move towards the design document to it? Then I try to explain them, hey, the design document is, it's kind of like a technical document where you define, hey, based on this requirement, this is how the solution will work. Hey, this is how I will create a flow. This is how I will create a code or Apex class. This is how the email will go. This is how it will trigger. But how would you remember? How would you define what was the requirement? So for that, you have different tools, or you can say a different artifacts or different documents that you can create in your requirement gathering phase. So number one, it's the BRD, business requirement document. So the business requirement document, it comprises of like the list of requirements that you discuss with customers, and now you have write it down in a very clear and a meaningful way. That defines, like, let's say, the whole project scope. You can divide it by different modules, different objects, different functionalities, and you can write it down in your own way. Then there's an FRD, functional requirement document. What exactly to build? So now you have a BRD where the requirements are written. Now you are defining what the functional requirement document is, and you can define how the functionality should work based on this requirement. My favorite is the user stories. This is, I think, the most detailed document if anyone can create. Based on the requirements that you have, you can define the stories, and that can like open up a very it gives you very much clarity on each requirement. So definitely it's tedious, like you have to write so much stories for each very simple item, but definitely it's very powerful, and it will help you in understanding the whole project scope very clearly. And you can also translate it to your development team, your QA team, your execs. Hey, why we are doing this? What does this functionality will do? So that user stories document is very useful. And in the end, the requirement traceability matrix. I think in my early days and now as my role, this is very important. uh, let's say you have bunch of documents throughout the project. Let's say you have a BRD, you have user stories document, you have test scripts. But how would you link it? How would you remember, hey, this requirement has, let's say, 10 user stories, and based on those 10 user stories you have 15 test cases in the document. How would you relate it in the end? Like, let's say as a manager, I want to see, hey, have we fulfilled this requirement? And then someone from the team can answer me, hey, yes, we have, because we have covered all of these test cases. We have covered, based on that, all these user stories are completed or accepted, and this requirement is now complete. And this is where the requirement traceability metrics comes in place. And basically, in short, it basically links all of it. Like, it's a basically an Excel sheet, or it can be, you can use any other tool where you have defined, hey, this is the requirement. Against this requirement, these are the user stories. Against these required user stories, you have these, that much test cases, and you can just write their IDs. You don't have to write or copy paste the whole user story or the test case, but that's the whole idea. Basically, it actually links everything in the end. My one recommendation to everyone is, sometimes when we get a very small project and we have to do it very quickly, then there's an executive decision that I make on my project. Hey, what kind of documentation I have to do? Because definitely we have to see the effort, the hours that we have on the project. And I go with, hey, let's do the BRD. Let's reuse user stories that we have in some previous project and just tweak it a little bit. And let's go to test cases. Or maybe in some cases, let's say we have a BRD document. Let's do that. And let's not go with the user stories because the project is so simple. But again, it's up to your manager, your execs, like how they see the project, how they want to move forward on the project. But that's just my assumption. That's how I see the speed, because now the world is like, um, uh, the project is all about speed, like how speedily you deliver this project to the customer and then move on to the next one. So let's talk about what a good user story is, because the requirement document, or the BRD, and the functional document, FRD, it's very simple. Like, you can just define the requirements in a very clear way. But to create a very good user story document, there is a certain format that you have to do. That's the best practice that everyone follows if they are creating a user story. So the basic template is, let's say, first you have to define the role, what this user story is about, what role is it impacting. So it can be a manager, it can be a rep, it can be a service person, it can be an exec, it can be anyone, it can be a customer. So you have to define the role. Now, the second part defines the goal, basically what you want to achieve. And in the end, you have to define how does it impact the business. It means the why. Like, the first part is who, the second part is what you are going to do, and the third part is how it will impact the business. So if we see an example, let's at the bottom. Uh, uh, the first one is a very simple one, but it's not sorry, but it's not clear. As a user, I want a password reset feature. It's not clear. Hey, why? How is it impacting the business? I know it's a very simple requirement, but if we are writing a good user story, we have to see what is impacting how is it impacting the business. So how it will write, if we have in a very good user story format, as a forgetful user, or a customer, or you can say just a customer. As a customer, I want to reset my password via email link. So that this is where you have defined the goal that you want to achieve. This is what you want system to do. Now the other part basically defines how is it impacting the business, so that I regain the account and access without calling support. Let's say if this doesn't work, or the functionality was not there and people are not receiving the email link, you can see the business impact, that people will start calling the support, or they will start shooting emails to the support, and it will create so much burden onto the team, which is unnecessary. So now you can see how a good user story is written. uh, and how it will impact the business. And based on that, like for each requirement, you can have multiple user stories, uh, and that's okay. And that basically helps you understand like how each feature will work. Now let's move towards the next one. It's about the traceability matrix document that I have already explained. Uh, so, and as what I explained is like it basically links everything. It links the requirement with the design, with the code, with the test cases, and everything with the user stories that you have written. And the reasons is like you don't know if all the requirements are tested. Like in the end, you have, let's say, hundreds of test cases in the document, and now you want to see, hey, have you tested out the system? Let's say the test cases say yes, we have tested out all the processes, all the features that have been built, but have we covered this requirement? And this is where the traceability metrics part will come into play. Let's say in the test case documents you have 10 cases for the password reset, or maybe 5, and you have tested it. In the traceability matrix, you can just simply say, hey, based on these 5 test cases, this requirement has been met and this requirement has been delivered. And now it will give your managers, your execs, your leads a very clear understanding. Hey, we have delivered this, and customer can agree. Hey, yes, definitely, because all of these items are passed, and which means that this functionality has been developed. And the single form is like the simplest format that you can use for the traceability matrix is, sorry, let's say you have a requirement ID. Like in the BRD, you define the requirements, and each requirement will have its own unique ID. And against that, you can define the test cases. What I further do over here, I have a separate column for the use case IDs as well, so that the person who is building the test cases should know about the user stories as well. Hey, why these user stories are there? How should I test this user story? And that can be re-linked over here in the requirement traceability matrix document. So this is where I would say the requirement gathering phase will end. What I have, let's summarize what we have discussed so far. So we have seen why the requirement gathering phase is so much important in the project, or either you are building a product as well. Like you have to understand what kind of product you are building. You have to do market research. You have to discuss with the customers, and in the end, you are gathering the requirements. Then we have discussed like what type of requirements you have, uh, like it can be functional, it can be non-functional, it can be user related, it can be business requirement that a customer wants to achieve. And then we have discussed what kind of documents you create in a different in each phase of a project, or you can say in the requirement gathering phase, different documents that we have discussed. The BRD, that defines the business, plain business requirements. The functional requirements, the how the functionality should work, how systems should behave. This is where we define the functional requirements. Then there was user story. User story defines a very clear step-by-step, role-wise requirement and the outcome of it, like how it impacts the business. And in the end, the traceability matrix that basically links every document that you create and links them together so that you have a very clear picture what is happening for each requirement. If you have any other question, any question related to the requirement phase or the documentation or anything related to it, please put that in the chat. Maybe we can discuss this at the end. Now, the second topic is, sorry, I forgot one thing, and I think it's about the best practice. I think we have already covered this. Why, if you don't have this document, then there are some consequences that you will have. And let's move forward. Okay. So the second topic that we will cover today is the process mapping, and I think this is one of my favorite topic. And usually, what happens if I give you my real world example, when I sit in a design review meeting with my team, and my first question with the team is, where is the process map? And usually, I think 50 to 60% times the team fails on this because they don't have a very clear. They have built something. They have built a process map, but they have not identified clearly the each step in the process map. Where does the process starts? This is what I usually ask. Hey, where does the process starts? How you're getting this information? Is it coming from a website? Is user manually entering this information? How is it coming in the system? And then usually I ask, and I think that's a very difficult question as well. Hey, where the process will end? We understand, hey, the user will do this and do this, a system will do this and do this, but where does it end? Is it end at the, let's say, if we talk about a typical sales process, let's say you have a lead, then it converts to an account opportunity, then a quote created, then an order is created, then invoice is created. Is it just ending at the invoice level? Is it ending at the invoice sent to the customer? Is it ending at the customer is paid or invoice is paid? Where does it end? So the team or whoever is working on the project, they should have a very clear understanding of the process. And there are two sides of it. First, they have to understand what's the as is process is. As is process means how customer is working right now. Let's say if they have a if they have a service process where they are getting cases, or you can say inquiries, issues from their customers, how they are working right now. Most of the cases can be very simple. Hey, we are just working in Excel. We get an email or a phone call, we just write it down in this document, and this is how we follow up. We have different columns where we maintain customer information, the issue, who is it assigned to, and that that's all they are doing. But in a complex way, let's say customer is using a tool, then you have to basically deep dive into it, understand the each step of it, like how is it going through the system, how is it assigned to the relevant people, how is it further processing moving forward in it. So that's why the process mapping phase is very important. And let's deep dive into it. So I think I've explained why is it important, but what's the process mapping? So it's kind of a visual diagram that you create that have different steps, decisions, and flow that shows a flow of information going either from left to right or from top to bottom. That totally depends on yourself, but it gives you how the information is moving from one step to another step. uh, and what's the benefit of it, like why does it matter? It gives you clarity on each step. Hey, let's say I've received a lead in the system, and let's say a user has created a lead manually, and there can be multiple inputs to it. Let's say a lead can come through a website, a lead can be entered through, let's say, manually by a user, and a lead can come through, let's say, from an Excel file as well that someone is importing in the system. So let's say there are three different inputs to a one single item, which is like lead is being created in the system. And that process will define, hey, the process starts from three different places, and which may define as like each place will have its own follow processes. Like if a web lead is coming from a website, then someone or system should basically automatically convert that lead into an account contact or opportunity. But if someone is creating a lead manually, they have to first assess it or process it through with the marketing team or with the sales team, and then they will be able to convert. Like you can see that there can be different decisions can be taken at each step, and each these decision steps can be covered in the process mapping. It like the process map also defines how the business will work in the solution or in the system. It defines step by step process, and that basically helps. Like if I give you a real world example, let's say you have gone live with a project and now the system is working. You have trained the users and they have a very good adoption, but let's say they have now hired bunch of more people into the company, the customer, and now they want to train them. How they will train them? They can definitely give that process map to their users, to their you can say new hires, and they can basically understand. Hey, first, if we are doing this, then you have to do this. This is how the decision will take, and this is what we have to do, and they can just reuse that information, and they can understand the system quickly. And also it will help you identify the bottlenecks. Very relevant. Like usually when I sit in a design review with my team, we try to see where the process is breaking, where the process is not handshaking with another process. Let's say you are integrating two different systems, and usually when we ask, hey, at what point of action that information should go to another system. So let's say you have Salesforce. In Salesforce, you are creating codes, and let's say you have a very different system, an ERP, you can say, where an order needs to be created based on an approved code. So if you don't know at what point of time that integration should call or that integration should work, definitely that means your process is not complete, and this is where you need to either review that internally or you have to talk to the customer. Okay, what happens if we don't have a process map? uh, Again, it's very clear, like you don't have an understanding. There's a no bottleneck visibility, like where the process will start and how where will it get stuck. Blame culture, which means like no one knows how the process is working and everyone is blaming it. It's you. Redundant steps, like there can be a step that is doing or happening multiple times, and that is redundant. That shouldn't happen. And versus, um and like based on this, like what are the consequences of it? Like each team has their own mental model. Like the sales team will think, hey, this is how our process work. The service team will think, hey, this is how our process will work. And then in the end, you can say the ordering team, hey, this is how we think our process should work. And there's no connection between it. uh, you automate a broken process, which is totally a disaster. Like let's say you have built something without thinking of the whole process of it, and that definitely it's a disaster. It's a very big because there will be no adoption and customer will raise so much issues, and then a rework will be done. um, and let's move towards the type of process mappings that we usually create uh, in uh, in the part of process mapping or in the design phase. So a very simple one is the basic flow chart. Like you have a very simple flow of each, you say, requirement or each module or a process. And it's a very simple one. You have a very start and end. You have very less complexity in it, and a basic flow chart can be created. Swim lane diagram basically defines uh, the different roles involved in all of the process. So let's say the example that I've given, there's a sales process team, then there is a service team, then there's an ordering team, there's a manufacturing team involved in all of the business, and you have to define how the information is flowing from sales to, let's say, the ordering team towards the manufacturing team, and then how the service team is coming into the play, where the information is linking, what decisions each team are taking at each certain step. So swim lane defines clearly each step-by-step decision, or you can say the activities that is happening within the flow. Then there is business process model. So let's say if you are working with a customer which have a very complex business process rules, they have so much rules in it, they have so much automations in it. That can be like you can use business process model. You can say type of process mapping over here. And the example that I have over here is the loan approval. I'm not sure if someone has working with the loan process, or you can say the loan management system. They have a very complex process, like how the loan is coming, how the information is being approved, what kind of documents we need from the customer, how the approval is working, what if the system or the loan is rejected, what information should go out. It's a very complex process, and this is where the business process model kind of like explains like how the process will work from start till end. So some best practices: have a very clear scope. You need to understand like what you're building. Maybe just have a very rough This is what I do. Like if I have to build a process mapping document, and usually when I was doing that earlier, uh, I write something in my notepad. Hey, the step one, this is what is happening. Step two, this is what is happening. Step three. And then when I start building that step by step, now then I have much more clarity uh, in my process mapping document. Hey, and then it gives me much more clarity in like what information is missing over here, what should happen after this step. Hey, this is not right, the steps should be something else. And this gives me much more clarity when I start creating the process mapping document. Walk the actual process first. So let's say, so like as I mentioned, uh, the as is process, you have to understand that first. If you don't have a very clear understanding how the as is process is, then definitely it is not giving you clarity, like the process that you're building for the customer, how is it helping them. Like let's say if you are building a solution for the customer where they were manually assigning the leads to the relevant team based on different logics, different rules, different conditions. It can be based on geography, it can be based on the size, based on different types of amount. Uh, that can be very clearly identified, very clearly can be articulated in the process mapping document. Hey, if this is the decision can be, hey, if the amount is greater than this, then assign the lead to this person. And then you can define all the rules uh, in the process mapping, and that gives clarity to the customer as well. Understand the symbols. I think it's very easy. Like how each symbol works. The diamond is the decision. The rectangle is the activity or the task that is happening. Arrow defines the flow. I think that is much more, I think, simple to understand. Swim lanes. I think I've explained this earlier. The swim lanes basically defines who does what. That defines the roles. That defines the systems. So it's up to you. How do you create the process map? Either you define it by role, and if there are multiple systems involved in the solution, then you have to create a process map for the systems as well. Hey, the system A, it can be Salesforce or any other system. This is what is happening in this system. And this is how the information will go and connect with the other system. And let's say there is a third system as well, and then you can see the connectivity between each system. And you can see at what point of time, at what activity the information or the integration will starts or kicks in. The best process, I think the best one it can be is like if you can create a process map which is very simple to understand, it doesn't have repeated steps, means like unnecessary steps, and it will if it is in one page, then that's good, but that's not a hard and fast rule. Like if your process is complicated and you have to create a big process map, that's okay, because in the end it will help you, it will help your team and customer. And like so once you have created all those process mapping documents, it needs to be get reviewed with the customer as well. Like don't just sit on it internally, get it reviewed with your manager and all of that, because when you give that process map to your customer and you show it to them, it gives them a very clear picture, like how they want to see the system will work. And based on that you will get some feedback. You will see they might have some more ideas to it, they might have some more clarity to the process. And in the end, like they will have much more trust on you. Hey, yes, these guys have understood our requirement and they are doing what we have asked them to do. And some tools that you can use to create the process map. Draw.io, I think it's a very common one, easy, free. You can use it. Then there's Whimsical, Miro, Lucidchart, Visio. There are different tools, and whatever tool you want to use, no restrictions. It's totally up to you. Uh, I think this is where the process mapping part will end. Uh, And just to wrap up, and the key takeaways from this session is requirements can be separate, like can be functional and non-functional. You have to decide. You have to see, hey, if customer is giving us this requirement, how a non-functional requirement related to this is, what it can be. what type of documents you are creating, BRD, FRD, user stories, requirement traceability metrics. You need to define how the good user story is. You have to think about it. Um, uh, then you have a process mapping. You see how the process works. You will see the points where the process doesn't make sense. You see where the bottlenecks is, where you can improve the customer's process, and then also the different tools that you can use. And I think this is where I will end my presentation. In short, the requirement gathering phase is so much important, and sometimes I think you will agree that customers or the teams go on site to the customer so that they can have face to face discussion. They can understand what customers are asking, what their different teams are doing. They can do interviews, they can observe, they can see how their system works. This is all just to be have a very clear requirements, and so that based on that you have a very clear design and build and further on. And the process mappings helps the requirement gathering phase, that it gives you clarity based on the requirements you have and the processes that you will define uh, for the solution. It completes basically the requirement gathering phase, and then definitely if these are right, these are complete, these are concrete, approved from the customer, then there is a very 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 less chance that the project goes sideways and uh, it's not adopted by the customer. But if these are like taken carefully, like the requirements are written down, approved, then definitely uh, very less chances, and the project will go success. So this is where I will end my presentation, and I just want to say thank you, everyone. It's Saturday, I know. It's a busy day, a lot of work to be done, and thank you, everyone, for joining. And I think now I'm open to open for question and answers. If you have any, please put that in the chat, and I will answer one by one.
Great session, brother. Thank you so much. I think there's a question from Waleed in the chat. Can you please check?
Okay, so the question is, what happens when the requirements are already signed off, but during a mid-project review, the client realizes they have missed a critical business step? How should a business analyst handle this type of sudden change? I think it's a very common use case. And I think what you cannot ignore is, like, you have to now put more efforts to it. And first you have to decide, hey, how critical it is. But as per you are saying that client is they have missed a crucial business requirement, then there is some negotiation needs to be done with the customer. You have to see how this requirement will impact what the overall solution you have built. If the that requirement is impacting a lot of features, a rework needs to be done, then a negotiation needs to happen with the customer. Like, this is where you have to involve your managers, your team, your execs. You have to give them very clear picture. Hey, this is not because of us. Now customer has, let's say, more ideas, and now they are saying, hey, we cannot go live without this. And then definitely a negotiation can be happened. Hey, based on the timeline, now the project timeline will get increased. We need more budget because we are now building this additional feature. And um, in short, a conversation needs to start happening with the customer. And in the end, that now customer will decide, hey, either should I go with this requirement or not. And if they say yes, and uh, then definitely you can ask for more budget, more timeline, like the timeline can increase. If I give you an example, in my recent project where we are integrating Salesforce with an ERP, the initial process was, hey, once the order is approved in Salesforce, it should go to the ERP. But in the end, what happened, the customer scrapped that process, and now they wants to integrate the products and they said, hey, we don't want to integrate the orders, and now we want to bring the products in the system from the ERP that have very different dynamics, very different information. Now that this is where we jumped in, and then we have a very clear discussion with the execs from the customer side, from our side, and we give them the change order. Hey, this is much amount we need extra, and this is how much time it will take to complete now. And I think I've cleared. Requirement traceability metrics is same as UAT. No, that's not UAT. UAT is a phase like your like user acceptance testing. It's you can say where this user will go and test out the solution, and you provide test cases in the UAT where user will follow each step by step uh, uh, the test cases, and they can test out the system. Versus the requirement traceability matrix basically maps those test cases back to the requirements that you have. And the requirement traceability matrix is kind of like an internal document uh, where the managers, or you can say the project lead, basically says, hey, based on these 50 requirements, have we delivered all of them? Because if all based, like, let's say of those 50 test cases, you have, sorry, 50 requirements, you have 100 test cases. And if those 100 test cases are passed, then which means like all 50 requirements have been fulfilled. So no, they are different. Any other question?
Yes, but there is one more from Eunice. Oh, you already answered it. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Um, I don't think there are more questions, and we are also on time. So again, amazing presentation, whether by as usual. So I'll be sharing the screenshot. Sorry, the presentation and also the recording on the YouTube. So you can if you want to revisit, you can. Other than that, we have session 4 is scheduled for the next week, as per now, and I'll be making an announcement for that. If you have any feedback, anything you want to discuss, or any suggestions for next training, whatever you would like us to schedule for you, so just let us know on LinkedIn or on WhatsApp, and we will be working on that. Other than that, amazing session. Thank you everyone for joining on the weekend. We really appreciate it, and have a great day. Thank you.
You guys.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone.